Good morning, and thank you so much for joining us today at this Big Read professional development session. I am going to turn it over to Lauren Bell and Jennifer Rubow and ask them to introduce themselves with, what they do and how they're connected to the Big Read. So Jennifer and Lauren, I'll let you take it away.
Sure. Okay. Thank you. And good morning, everyone. My name is Jennifer Rubow. I am with the Environmental Cooperative at the Vassar Barns, which is an outreach and education initiative through Vassar College. We're located out on the Vassar Farm and Ecological Preserve in an old dairy barn. That's where our offices are, but we do a lot of work in the Poughkeepsie community. And we got connected with the Big Read through Jewel. I don't know. I can't even remember how it all started. It just happened. Oh, because you're doing Lab Girl, and I love that book. So, and it's just, it just ties in really nicely to what we do here at the cooperative. So I'm going to hand it over to Lauren so she can introduce herself, and then maybe Lauren, if you don't mind just going ahead and talking about this first slide and having everyone else introduce themselves as well.
Yeah, sounds good. Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Lauren Bell. I am the Outreach and Education Assistant for Jen at the Environmental Cooperative, and I'm also a Student Conservation Association member right now. I have a bachelor's degree from the George Washington University in Sustainability and Geography, and have research and publication in the connection of mental health and access to green space and nature. So that leads us into this first slide where I put a photograph. This is actually the Tetons out in Wyoming. And what I'd like you to go through is your name, where you're from, or what school district you're from, and then tell us what you feel when you look at this photograph. And so if it's okay, Jen, would you mind reading through the order you see it on your screen? Because when I'm in share, I have a hard time seeing the names.
Yeah, sure. So I'm just going to go down people's pictures here and the name. Let's see. Hold on. Let me just make sure I can see everyone's names. I guess I can also look in the chat. Did everyone get their names in the chat? Okay, so we'll start with Kirsten Burke.
I'm Kirsten Burke from Wappinger Central School District, and when I look at these amazing mountains and this burbling creek, I just feel peace, but also like there's an adventure awaiting.
Mm-hmm. Great. And what grade do you teach?
Fourth grade.
Fourth grade. Okay. Mm-hmm. Paige.
I have to agree with Kristen. I think it's very peaceful. It's calming, and I'm interested in the sounds that I would hear there for some reason. Oh, and I teach at Arlington. I teach 9 through 12 biology and forensic science.
Great. Christine.
Hi, Christine Furnius, 7th and 8th grade ELA, and I feel a sense of awe when I see this picture.
Perfect. And you said 7th and 8th grade ELA, right? Ashley?
Hi everyone, I'm Ashley Grillo. I'm the librarian at Spackenkill High School. And I have to agree with what everyone has said so far. It's definitely very peaceful. It looks very warm and inviting to me, especially with those blue clouds, the blue sky with the clouds. And it feels very much like my environment right now in my backyard.
Do you have mountains in your backyard?
I have a nice little forest back here with a little rock fence going around, and there were deer here just a minute ago.
Oh, nice. Great. Alice.
I'm not sure Alice has a microphone, so she entered her comment in the chat.
Okay. So let's see.
Alice Wong, a teaching assistant at Oak Grove. I feel peace and an invitation to challenge to climb to the top.
Yeah, I agree with that. It looks exciting to me. Okay, Cynthia.
Hey everyone, I'm Cynthia Ramsey and I teach at Haviland Middle School in the Hyde Park School District. And I agree with everything that everyone said before, but I also feel some nostalgia because I've been to the Tetons before and I absolutely love it there. And it's a beautiful area and it reminds me of lots of great hiking I've done there.
Excellent. Let's see. Jen Simmons.
Hi, I'm Jen Simmons. I'm the librarian at Myers Corners and Wappingers. There's a lot of background noise here because we've got chainsaws going and we lost a tree. When I look at this, I feel the awe, the peace, but it reminds me of some fun times that I've had with my family in the Adirondacks. So I guess fond memories.
Great. So another feeling of nostalgia from that. Let's see, I lost my spot. We said Amanda.
Hi, sorry I'm a little late. My name is Amanda Ingles. I'm the librarian over at John Jay High School in Wappingers. And what do I feel when I see this photograph? Hell no. Like, yeah, I don't know if I'm expected to climb this or what, but I will sit right here by the riverside. That's how I feel.
That's great. Okay, let's see. Some other, I know I missed some people that haven't put their name in the chat, so I'm going to try and figure out who I missed. Alexa?
I tried to put my name in the chat earlier, but like Zoom restarted randomly a few minutes ago, so I don't know what happened.
Okay.
Amanda, I'm dying. I can't believe you just said that. For me, I feel a sense of awe, like everyone said, and also a sense of yearning because my husband and I, we got married this year. Exciting. What a weird year to get married. And we missed our honeymoon. Woo! So we were thinking about next year, maybe we're just going to do like this whole like road trip kind of thing. And we were planning on doing a bunch of the national parks. So this is definitely on our list.
Nice. Congratulations on your wedding. Trina.
When I see this photo, I feel really calm and I feel like I can actually hear the gurgling water. I feel like I can really visualize and feel the senses that I would feel if I was actually sitting there. So very calm, peaceful. That's how I feel.
Yeah. Diane?
Yes, Diane, West Road, Arlington. It's absolutely beautiful. Makes me think of clean, clear air that I can breathe, unlike living in Hudson Valley. And I look forward to seeing this one day when I retire, sell the house, live in an RV, and travel the country. So this is on the list.
Nice. And then let's see, who Michelle, did you get? Okay.
Hi everyone. I agree with what everyone said. I feel a sense of calm and peace, but I also wonder what kind of creatures live there. So it makes me wonder, you know, who will I meet when I walk that journey or take that adventure?
Yeah. Great. And is there anyone else that did not get a chance to share? If so, you can just speak up because I kind of lost track on my page here. But. Okay. Okay, great. So Lauren, do you want to take
Okay,
it from
so,
here?
yeah, I guess if that's everyone, we'll move on. So before I go over why I showed you that picture, welcome to the Scientific Observation and Forest Bathing Professional Development module as a part of the Big Read. A big thank you to Jewel for all the work you've done in putting this together. Jen and I are very excited to be here today and very excited to be working with all of you. We just wanted to go over a few quick norms before we begin. This session is being recorded, so just be aware of that. It's going to be available for future reference. Jewel's going to send you out an email after this session that will have a link to the PD if you want to go back and watch any of it or share it with friends. And you'll also be getting a lesson plan that goes with this lesson and a presentation to show that's a little bit similar to the one I'm showing now. At the end of this lesson, there will be a Google form that will be sent in the chat, and that's how we're going to track your attendance and also get general feedback so we can make this even better in the future. Please make sure your microphones are muted when you're not talking so that everyone can hear well. And please keep your video on if you can throughout the whole session. We will be having people shut off their video and go outside for the forest bathing section, but that's the only time we prefer for you to have your video off. Please be patient if there's any technological difficulties. Stay engaged and keep it a collaborative culture as we move through today's lesson. All right, so I wanted to put that picture up there as a way to start thinking about how nature can inspire a variety of emotions and impact your physical as well as mental health. And I heard a lot of people saying that just seeing that picture, you know, they felt more calm, more peaceful, this sense of awe, which awe is such an interesting emotion to me because it's this feeling of respect, fear, and wonder all put together. And there's a lot of benefits of feeling those emotions all together. Someone even mentioned they felt challenged. So it just brings up a lot of mostly positive things when we're looking at nature or in nature. So some of the studies that have been done on forest bathing and spending extensive time in nature has shown a decrease in stress, better concentration, increases in reducing feelings of anxiety, depression, anger, a variety of mental illnesses. It improves our overall well-being, improves metabolic health, helps our immune system, also helps our cardiovascular health. So there's a lot of reasons that forest bathing and spending time outside can really be beneficial for us. So why are we talking about forest bathing right now amidst everything that's going on? Why is it important? So as of 2000, we have become an urban species. And by 2050, 3/4 of the world's 9 billion people are going to live in cities. And we've also moved from being a species that normally spends most of its time outdoors. And now Americans are spending 93% of their time indoors and an average of 10 hours and 39 minutes a day consuming media. That means that we're on screens for more time than we sleep every single day. And so I want us to think about what are the impacts that this sudden change in humanity has to our mental health as well as our physical health. So some of the negative impacts that we see from being on screen so long are anxiety, headaches, depression, mental fatigue, eye and neck strain, insomnia, irritability. And I'm sure some of your students have been talking about how they have more headaches from going online. They're on screens for 8 hours a day, and then their whole social world is often also on screens, especially in the world of COVID. So I think it's really important that we start to equip ourselves and students with ways to work through mental health illnesses that might come up from this, as well as headaches, migraines, and other things that come up from spending so much time on screens. Additionally, how we're moving to be an urban species. This is causing more stress, as city living can be very stressful. We see more mental health illnesses in cities, more heart attacks, more cancer, as well as more strokes. And the World Health Organization has actually called stress the epidemic of the 21st century. And that study came out before COVID, but COVID has only exacerbated this feeling of stress in almost everybody. So I think nature is such a great tool that we have right now, and forest bathing can really help us. And what it's really about is completely unplugging from technology and finding your connection to nature, which can be so healing. And I heard some of you talk about how you could see that picture and almost feel being there, and you could hear the creek and you could feel the breeze. And that's really what forest bathing is about, is taking in everything around you with all of your senses. And it's actually seen as a form of preventative healthcare, such as eating healthy and exercising, as it helps so many things, mental health, physical health. So I'm going through this a little bit quickly, so I want to make sure that we have time to actually practice some forest bathing. But I have been using Dr. Ching Lee's book on forest bathing as my primary guide to this lesson, and he is the chairman of the Japanese Society for Forest Medicine. And his definition of forest bathing, which is called Shimin-yoku, means bathing in the forest atmosphere. It's taking in the forest through our senses. It's not exercise, it's not hiking or jogging. It's simply being in nature, connecting through it through our sense of sight, hearing, taste, smell, and touch. And so why being outside is so important. When we're inside, we're normally just using 2 of our senses. I'm going to use a quote from Dr. Ching Lee to talk about this briefly. He says, "Indoors, we tend to use only 2 senses, our eyes and our ears. Outside is where we can smell the flowers, taste the fresh air, look at the changing color of the trees, hear the birds singing, and feel the breeze upon our skin. And when we open up our senses, we begin to connect to the natural world." And so when we're outside, we have this ability to tune in to all 5 of our senses and really disconnect from technology and media that we're consumed in all day, every day of our lives. And this also really connects to the next portion of this professional development that Jen will run about scientific observation. Scientific observation is done through all 5 of our senses. So being able to forest bathe well and feel calm and connected to nature can really help you to be a keen observer and a better scientist. So normally forest bathing is an activity that should be a couple hours long. Dr. Ching Lee suggests 2 hours to really feel the full benefits. This obviously isn't going to work in a classroom setting or in the middle of our professional development. So right now we're going to do what is called a green micro break. And this is, we'll just kind of begin to dive into our connection to nature and practicing what you would do on a longer forest bathing session. And so I know I went through that quickly and you're probably like, what actually is forest bathing? So when we go off the screen in a couple minutes, what I want you to do is go outside, go in your backyard, wherever is accessible right now. If you don't have anywhere to go, just pretend and go practice later. So just pay attention to what you're feeling right now, what you're feeling during, and what you're feeling after. See if you're more stressed, see if you're more calm. And then please don't take any technology with you. This is really about disconnecting. And so once you're outside, can really be helpful to kind of use this as a meditation. You can focus on your breath, make yourself feel calm. If you're having trouble tuning into all of your senses, it's like too much. You want to hear, you want to see, you want it all. It can help to just close your eyes and listen to what you hear. And that can be a good start to connecting to the natural world. finding a comfortable place to sit or taking a short walk. You can also find one object to look at and observe really closely. This is what I like to do because it really helps me get into it and actually focus on forest bathing. You can get like one flower petal, one leaf, walk up to a tree, and just see how much you can observe about it in this short amount of time. And it's crazy how much you can learn about one thing by looking at it for 10 minutes long. In a lot of the videos and studies I watched, the forest therapy guide suggests walking up to a tree and talking to it, trying to connect with it, have a conversation, laugh, have fun. Make sure you're physically comfortable because otherwise you'll be very distracted. So if it's hot, make sure you have water with you, wear comfortable shoes, etc. And just like scientific observation, remember that this is all about observing with all 5 of your senses. And we're also asking you to bring back one object to use for scientific observation. So bring back with you, it could be a rock, it could be a leaf, it could be the flower you were looking at, whatever it is that you kind of feel inspired by, and we'll be using that to observe after you come back. So now what I would ask you to do is turn off your screen and go outside and practice for 10 minutes. It's now 11:37, so we'll say come back at about 11:45. We'll cut it a little short because we have to move on. All right, so again, don't sign out, just turn off your screen and come back in about 10 minutes. And if you have any questions, I will still be here.
So Lauren, we might have to, I guess, is it okay? Oh, we have till 12:15, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I was thinking we ended at 12, but
yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
that's okay. Much better.
Yeah, I went a little fast, so.
Yeah, no, I think it's good. I think we're doing good.
Okay, it looks like we have most people back, and hopefully people will start trickling in, and we'll have everyone back in the next few minutes. But we're going to move on and do a little discussion so that we can move on to Jen's portion about scientific observation. So our first discussion question is, how did you feel before, during, and after your experience with forest bathing? If you want to share, just unmute and start talking.
I'll start. So before, I think I was still carrying some stress just from my morning, you know, family things, house things, and even like, is Zoom going to work properly today, and those types of things. When I was outside, at first it was a little stressful because I think I discovered we have some ground bees, and then I just moved carefully around that area and found a nicer spot. And it was pretty calm. At first, I noticed more insect sounds. Like there seemed to be a constant hum of activity right where I was, unrelated to the bees. It was a different type of sound. And then it kind of amplified, and I was noticing more different bird calls and only a few neighborhood sounds, not as many as I thought I would. And definitely feel more calm and energized. Yeah.
Great, thank you so much for sharing. All right, and then the second discussion question. So how can these micro breaks in green space be implemented into your own life, or bringing nature inside? Are there any ways that you would implement the techniques of forest bathing in your day-to-day life?
I'll say something here. One thing that I do enjoy going outside, and I definitely agree, like listening, you know, your senses just become definitely more aware when you go outside, you know, listening, like you said, listening to the wind, you know, the bugs, the insects and things like that. And, you know, you do feel more of a sense of calm, or even just more energized and stuff whenever you can come back in. So, you know, obviously this might not be possible for everybody, but, you know, one thing that I know I did, at least in my apartment, is I was able to put in a screen door. And so after putting in the screen door, I noticed that like I've been able to just open up my other door more often and just bring those noises inside into my house more. So.
Can I just comment on that? Because I think that is really interesting, and something that is missing with our lives that are surrounded by air conditioning, right? Like, so whenever now, like most of us have air conditioning in our homes and rarely open the windows and the doors. And I've always been an anti-air conditioner, and my family hates me, but I have found that it really does make it so that we don't go outside as much, and we don't hear all of those summer noises anymore because we have all of our doors and windows shut. But I love that idea of just putting in a screen door and keeping it open, right? So thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. And same thing, like, I mean, I love my AC, you know, when you really need it, but I will be the last, like, I'll wait until the last second to be like, okay, I'm really dying here. I gotta turn it on.
I would just like to say one of the things that I do that helps out in the classroom as well as in my home. I'm just going to turn my screen here so you can see. So like a 360 around me right now. I just have a jillion plants. And one thing that I noticed when I went outside is, luckily we've had some rain recently, so everything is green again, but I just stepped like into the woods right outside of my house, and everything is just so green, and there's something about just being completely engulfed in that green color, you know, not to mention the bird sounds and the wind sounds and all of those other things, but just having that green color around you is very soothing.
Yes, that's so true. Thank you.
I'm going to be brave here and ask a question. do fake plants count as bringing nature inside? Because I have single-handedly murdered every single plant that has ever crossed the threshold of my home, and it's not on purpose. Like, I try so hard, and I've got cute photos of plants on the wall, and I got like some fake succulents, you know, from TJ Maxx, and like those look nice. So I live in an apartment, so I didn't go outside because honestly, there's a dumpster truck outside right now, and it's not a fun time. But like my neighbor put out a bird feeder, so sometimes we see birds fly by the window, like that's cute. But plants, I don't know, cheating.
So my daughter, I have a 10-year-old, and she wants to buy fake plants for her room. And her and I have this big discussion about, should you get fake or real? And she's like, but they always die. And I'm like, I know they always die, but I think they do count. I think fake plants count.
Yeah, I think so too. Even just having pictures of plants helps. So the last question before we move on, do you think that if people spend more time in nature, they'll be more willing to take care of it?
I'm going to jump in with a note from Alice on the chat box, and she recommends to Alexa, try to plant rosemary. They're very hardy, and not to mention they smell great.
I'll just say, you know, in response to the question for number 3 here, I think people will, you know, be willing to take more care of nature. I mean, when it's like if you spend all day in your house, are you going to be more willing to take care of your surroundings and pick up after yourself in your house because that's where you're living all day? And that's not to say, hey, we're going to be out living all day in nature, but, you know, the more time that you spend in a place, the more likely you are to see what's going on around it. And I would agree that the more likely you are to want to all of a sudden notice things like, hey, that piece of trash doesn't belong there. And, you know, maybe I should pick it up. So I would agree with that statement. Yes.
Yeah, thank you. That's one of my hopes from more people being outside during this time, since it's been one of the only things to do. And I'm hoping that since people are spending more time in nature, they'll be more willing to take care of it and pick up after themselves. Any other comments or questions before we move on?
Trina says, I think that people will understand the connections in nature more if they spend more time outdoors. They will feel the calming effects and make more observations about creatures and interactions.
That's a wonderful point. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to pass it over to Jen now.
Okay, all right, thanks. So I hope everyone was able to bring back or has an object that they can use for this next portion. If you want to just hold it up to your camera so we can all see it. I have a leaf. Nice. I have to scroll through everyone's pictures. Okay, so I see some flowers, some leaves, some seeds, samara. Oh, giant leaf. Wow. Okay, some fruit, it's a piece of wood. Okay, great.
It's bark.
And bark, okay. And Kirsten, what do you have? Is that a pine cone?
It's an acorn.
An acorn, awesome, okay. So I think it's pretty obvious, this whole idea, the connection between forest bathing and scientific observation. They both are using the same thing. You're using your 5 senses. And in scientific observation, I guess maybe the difference is that you're actually developing questions with the idea that you are going to be able to answer those questions through the scientific process at some point. For this purposes of this PD, we're going to take you through the first steps of developing that question. And we're going to be using the prompts I notice, I wonder, it reminds me of. So probably some of you have used these prompts before, maybe in other ways. I don't know if everyone has. I notice and I wonder, I think, are pretty common in a lot of, it's pretty multidisciplinary prompts to use with students. But I'm going to go through them anyway and talk about them specifically in relation to observing an object that you find in nature. And so Lauren, if you could switch to the next slide. Okay, so everyone has their object, and we're going to go through these quickly, and I'd like everyone to actually do the process themselves with the object that you brought from outside, or your nature object. And the first part of it is to use the prompt I notice. So when you're looking at your object, and this is where you actually make your observation, it's important to kind of to write down or talk about what you're seeing in the moment. And a big important part about scientific observation is that you're being objective. You're not making assumptions. You're not, you shouldn't try to have any expectations about what you're seeing. You're just kind of recording what it is you see at that moment for that specific object, excuse me. So one thing that these observations are not is it's not an identification. So I have a leaf here, and I'm not going to say I notice it's a leaf, right? Because that's pretty obvious. I'm also not going to say my opinion about this leaf. Like, I'm not going to say I think this leaf is kind of ugly because it's all old and crinkly. And I'm not going to try to make an explanation. So there's a piece missing from the leaf, and I'm not going to say the leaf was eaten by bugs unless I actually have seen some insect eating that leaf. That's not going to be one of my observations for this object. Some of the things that I will say is that I notice that the leaf is brown, that it's beneath the leaf. I notice that it appears to be dead. I notice that it's has kind of a very wavy edge to it. So those are just some examples of what you might write down for the prompt I notice. So if anyone wants to share with us something that they notice about their object. So Amanda writes in the chat, I noticed this piece of bark was on the ground and not on the tree. Okay, so, and I noticed that there were many pieces of bark on the ground. Great. So that's a really great observation in the fact that you're not only looking at the bark, but looking at the context of where you found it as well. So that's also really important. Would anyone else, one more person can share what they notice about their object? So Kirsten says that she notices that her acorn is small and green. Okay, good. So just kind of just to the point, right? We're just trying to keep things very objective and really just talking about what exactly we're seeing in the moment. And this isn't always an easy thing to do. I mean, even for adults, and it oftentimes takes practice and just a constant reminder in your own mind that this is what you're doing, because as humans, we like to just make opinions right away or try to solve problems right away. Okay, great. So moving on to I wonder, this is where we actually ask our question. And in this case, when we talk about questions in science, especially with students, and especially if we want our students to be able to answer that question, a lot of times it's easiest not to use why questions. Why questions can often be very philosophical. And so sometimes if you just drop the why from the question, it's easier to find an answer to that question. But the questions that start with if, like I wonder if, I wonder when, I wonder how many, right? Those are questions that can actually be, can be answered by students much easier than asking why. So that's something that's really important to keep in mind as students are asking questions about their object. So for my leaf, I mean, a question I could ask is, I wonder how many leaves like this fell off the tree, right? I could ask the question, I wonder what happened to the leaf. Like, I wonder if it was eaten by something. Yeah, so we have a few examples here. So people are already typing in the chat some wonder questions. I wonder how large these leaves grow, was from Ashley. I wonder why the bark is falling off the tree. That's a good question. It's also a why question. So, I mean, maybe you could change that question to, I wonder when the bark fell off the tree, or I wonder if the bark is falling off the tree, or did something pull it off, right? I wonder, so another question from Kirsten is, I wonder how long it would have taken to fully mature on the tree if it never fell off due to the storm. That's a great question. And that's something that's easily measured, right? So yeah, so I think you guys get the point of I wonder. There's a great lesson plan through the Carey Institute in Millbrook that is all about asking really good scientific questions. And we have that resource at the end of this too. So a lot of what we're doing today is being pulled from other lesson plans. The Carey Institute has a really is a great resource for some good lesson plans. Okay, and then the last part of this is talking about what it reminds you of, right? And this is can be the really fun part when you're talking with younger kids, because kids love to tell stories, and this is where you can give them the opportunity to tell them a story about their object, because maybe it reminds them of something really great or really exciting that happened to them, which is good. That's all part of it, and that's all part of being a scientist as well. Scientists are often studying things that they're passionate about and that remind them of something. So, so this is really an important part of the whole process. But also the it reminds me of piece is where students can draw on prior knowledge or prior experiences to relate to the object they have in their hand. So in this case, you know, my leaf reminds me of, it's really thick and tough. So it kind of reminds me of a piece of like leather in some ways. It's really, really thick. The veins on the leaf actually remind me a little bit of a feather. So if everyone wants to just kind of put in some, or if anyone wants to talk and unmute themselves, feel free to share what your object reminds you of. We can do that now too. So let's see. So Cynthia is writing that her leaf reminds her of a tie-dyed shirt, which is probably a lot of different colors, right? The egg-like things remind me of a pom-pom. So it must have been, Christine, do you want to show us what you found? Can you hold it up so I can see? I'm interested to see what it is.
Yeah, I'm holding it up to the camera.
Oh,
right now.
yeah, I see it. Okay. Cool. Those are little galls, like probably made by an insect.
Are they eggs? What are they? What's their purpose? That was my...
Yeah, a lot of times there could be an egg in there. Sometimes the insects, sometimes it's just a abnormality that is formed by the insect and the insect feeding on the leaf. But a lot of times there is like a little bit of there's an egg in there, or something has deposited something in there. So yeah, we have this branch reminds me of a vivid yellow autumn leaves, right? So this can be kind of the more creative piece of it, as well as where you're going to get your this is where you have your question, and then you have your experiences that kind of back up that question and your prior knowledge that helps inform that question that you've asked. Okay, so before we move on, I just want to also mention that maybe for older students, having two objects and making a comparison is often a lot richer than just having one object. So like I collected 2 leaves, and you could go through the same process with these 2 objects as well. So I could, I could say I noticed 1 leaf is green and 1 leaf is brown. And then I wonder, why is this leaf still alive, or is still green? And why is this leaf obviously been dead for a long time? So then I could ask questions like, did the green leaf blow off the tree from the storm yesterday? And is there something wrong with the tree that had the brown leaf, that it's just dropping its leaves? So having a comparison when asking scientific questions really helps to make your questions a lot richer and sometimes easier to formulate. Okay, so then we have a few discussion questions that can go along with this exercise. And I don't know if anyone wants to unmute themselves and kind of talk about a little bit, like, did you find it easy to do? Did this help you discover patterns in your objects or in nature? Like if you had actually been sitting outside and doing this outside, maybe you would have seen more patterns. Did you discover anything interesting? Does anyone would anyone like to share a little bit about their object and this overall process?
I'll just say, I think this would be very easy for students of any grade level to accomplish or do. I mean, K to 12. And very important for them to be able to go out and do as well, especially starting with like the forest walk and things like that. I do, the only thing I do worry about, and this is just obviously from like a classroom management point of view, is students getting off track, and that's simply because of like either technology or all of the other things that come into like daily life, and how we would get them back on track with that, or just them going, if we were all together, coming back and like forming
yeah,
them congregating and like, oh, let's just talk, and not really take the time to
One of the suggestions in the lesson plan through the Beatles project, which is, you can look at that entire lesson plan on, I think it's just beatlesproject.org, but we have the resource at the end. But they suggest pairing up students and then having the students say their questions and their observations out loud to each other, just to help them stay focused. And then just going through and sharing as doing like a pair share kind of structure to the program, which I think would probably be really helpful in helping with management. The other thing that you can keep going with this and then have them ask the question, I think maybe, and that's where the hypothesis forming comes in. So this might be, upper elementary or middle school students, where they pick one of the questions they came up with in the I wonder section and fill in the prompt, I think maybe, and have them actually formulate a hypothesis about their question, about an answer to their question. Okay, Lauren, can you go to the next slide, please? Thank you. So one other way that I've done this with, and I did this during a summer camp with students, but I think it could be easily translated into a classroom. And it adds a little bit more of maybe some creative or artistic piece to it. Is I've used this circular journaling structure, which is part of, which I've gotten from a website called Wheels of Time and Space. And it's, I really like it for this exercise because I really like the idea of having these questions in a circle, because it is really an iterative process. Like, scientists do not go through and create questions and hypotheses in a linear fashion, right? It's something that they are constantly revisiting and going back to and tweaking in some way or another before you get, you know, significant results. It's not an easy process, and it's not something that happens, you know, step by step. So I like having the circle to kind of signify that, you know, you kind of keep going around and around with, you can keep going around and around with the same question until you get an answer that you feel is appropriate. But in this project, I had the student draw, or if they didn't feel comfortable drawing it, just describing in words their object in the center and then answering the questions around the circle. And then you could even add a, I think what I had done with older students is added, I think maybe around the outside, to have them try to formulate a hypothesis using this kind of format. So this is an example of this that I did with my 10-year-old for this. She was super excited to do this for me. Not really, actually. Anyway, so she looked at some flowers on our backyard and then came up with the I notice, I wonder, it reminds me of. All right, so so here's our list of resources. You're going to get a copy of this presentation, so that has all the resources as well as links in it. And I guess I'm just wondering if anyone has any other comments or thoughts about this, or if anyone has done something like this that they've had some experience with students.
Over at Kinry in Wappingers, I had the students go out. We actually had a guest poet come, and we went on a nature walk, and each kid had to find some sort of object in nature, whether it was rock or leaf or something, just like we just did. And they created a poem, and it was really focused. Like, we went out, and the kids knew to be respectful and just walk and really get as much as they could from seeing, hearing, and just noticing as much as they could, so that they would be able to bring that out in the poems. And the poetry guest, the poet, she guided and modeled the poems, but any teacher could do that, where if you guide and model an example of a poem from whatever you gathered in nature, then the kids would be able to practice and share. And it was neat to see, as the kids shared their thoughts and their observations, more and more creativity was seen in the group.
Yeah, I love that idea. I think that's great, of doing it, you know, of using an object to create a poem. Thanks, yeah. Anyone else?
I haven't had a chance to do something like this with my students, but as a student, like when I was in high school, I had a teacher assign us something similar, though his version of it was to tell us to go contemplate a tree. And that was like all the direction we got. It was interesting. So I went home and I told my parents, I'm like, I have to contemplate a tree. They're like, what? I'm like, I don't know. But, you know, I think especially like if we're, you know, we may or may not, I mean, who knows, but, you know, being in the remote learning environment, I think you know, for me personally, getting out and just going on walks has been like mentally life-saving. I feel like these last couple of months, you know, just to get out for a little bit. I think anything we can do to encourage kids to get outside, even if it's just to like sit in their backyard, you know, for 5-10 minutes, you know, I think would be beneficial to them for a lot of reasons.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I do think, so I think it's important to remember that it's really, like, you really do need to train yourself to make good observations, right? And to think of good questions for those observations. It's not, I don't think it's something that comes naturally to everyone. Some people maybe, but, and so especially for students, and it takes time, like, and it takes focus, which I think is something that, you know, I've noticed even in my own kids is sometimes hard for them to do. So doing something like this, especially now, and especially if it is able to get them away from a screen for a little bit, I think is really, could really be beneficial.
Well, I'm going to jump in here because we have reached the end of our time, and I just want to point to the chat box where I've added the link to a Google form that I would ask each of the participants to fill out, please. This will be your attendance verification for your district for credit for PD, as well as giving us some feedback on this session. And I want to thank Jen and Lauren for for guiding us through this excellent presentation and experience. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. And if you do have any questions about the Big Read, please don't hesitate to email me. I will be sending you the recording and the presentation and so on. So that will all be coming to you in email. And so I think that's pretty much it. If anybody has any last minute questions, let me know.